Access granted. Welcome to the Bunker Codes podcast. Nothing here is medical, dental, vision, legal, or financial advice. We're all on the same team, wishing for peaceful resolution where everyone can get along and be left alone. Enjoy your stay. Bye.
Welcome back to another episode of I'm Gonna Talk, and you're gonna listen, and we're all just gonna endure the background noise and pretend like it's not there. I'm pretty sure, maybe fairly-ish, I don't know, sure that I said my most recent last episode would be my last episode of the Bunker Codes. But I have a little bit more time. Well, I'm super tired and I have a super headache. I was testing out some power supply stuff and some solar panel stuff, and I guess I'll start with a PSA that make sure you test your shit out, and B, like, so many of your skills are just like perishable. It's insane. It's impossible to test like everything out all the time and practice everything all the time. But you should get everything out and test it once in a while, especially like if you think bad shit's gonna happen, like if it gets really hot, and there's a bunch of fires and a bunch of the grid goes down. We don't have any like smoke here right now, but I'm sure it's only a matter of time. But also, like, I don't know how well solar works with like those really bad fires. So that's something to think about. So yeah, I've got like a main topic, which is, I think, going to be really interesting. Oh, hello. Oh yes, this episode is filmed in front of a live studio audience. I think it's just us in here right now. I think those other folks are from earlier. So I don't say folks' names just to protect the innocent. But I appreciate you all, and feel free to ask questions in the chat, and they'll end up in the podcast. Again, this is a podcast filmed in front of a live. Yep, I think I said all that. I just started it. And so what was the first thing? Test your equipment. So you learn all kinds of new stuff all the time. Like, obviously with the big battery changes, everyone started with like lithium ion. It's lighter. You get more like punch for the weight. You might even say it's like a little bit more affordable, but it's extremely volatile, and it doesn't last as long, not as many charges. So, there's lots of things. It doesn't last very long, meaning like it just like dips. Like the parasitic draw, like even if you've got the thing like turned off, it goes down like a couple % every couple days. So contrast that with lithium ion phosphate. I hadn't dug my battery out in like 6 months. Oh, thank you. Well, it's very, I'm so glad you're here, Miss Number One. Don't hesitate to ask questions if you have questions, and we can just derail this whole thing and talk about whatever you want. I don't mind. So yeah, lithium ion phosphate, lithium iron phosphate, sat at 100% for like 6 months of me not using the damn battery. I don't know how the hell that magic happened, but it happened. Also tested the deep freezer. Hey, good to see you. All right, now it's a party. Tested the deep freezer, and the deep freezer used about 60-70 watts idling. or 0 at all if it didn't even need to do whatever the hell. Oh, to run the fan. Yeah, to run the fan was 60 or 70 watts. Otherwise it was idling at 0, which is insane. And then if it ran the compressor, the defrost, it was about 700 watts. So if you have your batteries, or if you have like kilowatt or whatever, I found my kilowatt, which makes me really happy. You know, make sure that you test that stuff. I had already forgot like which cables did which things. I forgot how to hook up the solar to the battery. Like, I also forget how much it hurts my head to drag a 100-pound lithium iron phosphate battery around. There's a lot of things to consider, you know. But, you know, someday once I settle down in a place, that battery's not moving. Math. Lots and lots of math. Yeah, so it was weird, right? The solar panels were sending voltage to it, but no wattage. And it wasn't sending any wattage because, like, the battery somehow magically stayed at like 100% for 6 months. This is my first lithium iron phosphate battery. So I had no idea that those things can just chill at 100%. Like, no power would go into it. It was full. It was full and it stayed full. If I did that with the lithium ion, that thing would be down down to like 60% or something. If I just left it alone for 6 months. It's insane. So dragging around a 100-pound battery sucks. Like, I was thinking about that a lot lately. Especially if you factor in like towing capacity. Like, your vehicle might be able to tow a trailer, you know, or like a camping trailer, but like, could it tow, you know, the trailer with anything in it? You know, and that's the thing, like, if you want to bring a bunch of lithium iron phosphate batteries around with you, you need something with like serious towing capacity, because if you want to bring 4 batteries around, that's 400 pounds plus. I mean, they make batteries now that are like sub 3,000 kilowatt hour batteries. You say I sound chipper tonight. I actually have like a really, really bad headache from moving that battery around, unfortunately. I took a bunch of stuff for it though, so I'm kind of just like, it's just kind of like a dull throb. That's the problem, like, me moving heavy shit around like kills my head. That's okay. Like pressure behind my eyes and stuff. And Tylenol and ibuprofen don't really like do anything. It feels like a concussion when I lift heavy stuff. So I had like a cold. It was funny because I was testing the deep freezer, and then I was taking like the ice packs out of the deep freezer and putting them on my head, and then just left the deep freezer open. That way the battery had something to do. But then, yeah, eventually the deep freezer fan turned on, and I was able to like draw enough. But yeah, even when the compressor was running and it was drawing 700 watts, like a 3,000 watt hour battery. I mean, 3,000 kilowatt kWh. Pump in a vein soon. Exercise caution. Yeah, well, what sucks too is like the battery and the controller together are like 170 pounds. And I was scooting that around a tiny bit, and that's probably what did it. But once those find their permanent home, they're going to be off the ground a little bit. And maybe I'm going to get some little rollers for them or something, so I can roll them. I definitely don't want them sitting on the ground. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to yawn. My bad. I'm just chilling, so like, I'm in chill mode, so I'm like yawning and stuff. I hope I don't pop a vein. I don't know. I don't know why my head gets like that. It feels like a concussion. So I just gotta chill. Moved everything back and then chilled out. It'll go probably pass in a couple hours, I hope. It's just like pressure headache. Plus the weather's being like really weird. But yeah, I was using like the big ice pack, and then that was like triggering the freezer to turn on, which was like triggering the battery to work, and so it's kind of funny. But yeah, even like 700 watts of the battery like held it just fine. Like these new like 3000 watt batteries are just so damn good. It's freaking ridiculous. And then, but yeah, they're making like half-Cs now though that are like just a little bit lighter, because 100 pounds is like way too heavy for most people. So if they chop them down to like 2000, they weigh about 70 pounds, which is like good enough for like most people to scoot them around. But I would rather have 3000 watters than just like park them somewhere or have little rolly chairs for them. And then of course the semi-solid states, which can actually hold a little bit more. And they're way more affordable for every per watt. They're way more affordable per watt. But the lifespan is kind of like in between a lithium iron and lithium ion. But their marketing kind of sucks. You sound so chill. I haven't stopped yelling. I'm sorry. This is how... Yeah, well, you like my podcasts then, because this is pretty much how I always talk. When I'm talking to you all, anyway. Do 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 do. Yeah, so that's kind of like my battery, like testing things spiel. I sound different? Well, yeah, I've got like a concussion headache and I'm on a bunch of Tylenol and ibuprofen. I guess if I sound happier, every weekend I try to like accomplish something. What? That sounds weird. I don't know. Every weekend I try to accomplish something. And so like to get the battery and the controller out and the solar panels and the cables and like try like different battery with the different solar panel, and then like run the freezer against it, you know, and then plug in like some phones and stuff. It's a lot of fun. It's really rewarding to like test your stuff out and like know it works. I was concerned, like there's this shitty thing with batteries, like battery tech. I think I brought this up before, but I don't care. I'll bring it up again. A lot of these podcasts are repetitive, but that's okay, I think. By the time you're seeing batteries come to market, they need to be like proofed out to actually see if like the technology's good, right? But they've already been in like marketing development and manufacturing for like a year. So you're testing them, unless you're super like early adopter, which I would never ever recommend on batteries. Never be an early adopter unless they're giving that shit away for free. It needs about 9 months to really like prove a battery out. So you wait your 9 months to try to decide if batteries are good or not. And by the way, they cost thousands of dollars, not to mention the solar panels. The next generation or the next configurations of batteries are already coming out. So when I got my first lithium ion battery, the tech was already like 2-3 years old. Now that helps a little bit because the price comes down. You can wait for some good sales. But it was also really daunting because the lithium iron phosphate batteries were already coming out. So I waited for those to really like solidify. Well, when I bought those, the next configuration of those was already coming out, and the semi-solids had already been announced. Well, now the semi-solids, the first generation of those are out. It's so, I feel really bad, unless people just have like stupid FU amounts of money. I feel really bad for people who bought massive amounts of lithium ion, because those batteries are only going to last a couple years if you use them like really hardcore. Now, the weight to power ratio on them is crazy. However, they're also super volatile. So I'm so glad I waited, because people were buying gigantic lithium ion batteries and battery banks. And if they were the early adopters of those, and they used them every day, those batteries are already going bad. And so I still stand by, for a very long time, that lithium iron phosphate batteries are going to be the way to go. They are just heavy as hell. And give it 9 months. Wait for the semi-solids to prove themselves out. They're gonna weigh like 20-30% less. They're gonna have like 20-30% more power. Their lifespan's still gonna suck compared to lithium iron phosphate, but their lifespan is gonna be way better than lithium ion, and they're gonna be way safer. So if you want to park the batteries in the back and sit on them forever, lithium iron phosphate's still the way to go. If you want something that's like semi-portable but way safer and way longer than lithium ion, then it looks like the semi-solid states are going to be the way to go. You know, if you can't handle the weight, meaning if you can't move it around, but also if your vehicle can't move it around. However, if you went with lithium iron phosphate, I don't think you should be mad at yourself, because I think the tech has peaked for a while. And the reason why I went with lithium iron phosphate is because it has the longest longevity, it has pretty good output, and it doesn't use it, and it's the safest out of what was available at the time, and it doesn't use any rare earth materials. And when it goes on sale, it goes on sale for a pretty respectable price. And I absolutely love having the control units separate from the batteries. But just gotta wait for solar to come down. Stinking solar arrays are so expensive. So expensive. And then with solar, you've got to look at like, okay, do you want to put it on your roof? Well, how good is your roof? Like, are you going to need to replace your roof soon? Or can your roof even support the weight of that many solar panels? Are the installers going to destroy your roof? You know? There's a lot of things to think about. And so I was thinking of solar. It's like, well, what if I have a manufactured home? Solar panels, hard solar, aren't that heavy. You know, so it makes me wonder, like, those are things that I have to think about. But if you have portable solar and the right cables, you know, you can just buy one set of solar panels and just use those to charge different batteries. And of course, with I don't know, to call them soft solar panels, like the wind just sends them flying. So, and you gotta have good enough panels to where if one little spot gets covered, it doesn't stop your whole panel from charging like the old Christmas lights, like I always say. So this is kind of like a 20-minute divergent conversation, but I think this summer, like you might think like, okay, no problem. You might think like solar is kind of like crackpot because like you need your power at night, which means you need batteries, blah 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 blah. But like you never need power during the summer. Well, that's not true because AC uses a lot of power, A, and B, if the power goes out, all your fridges and freezers are dead, which means all your food preps are toast. But also like that's prime time for the power to get knocked out, unfortunately. But also like the fires can knock the power lines out. That's not even taking into account people being jerks, and not, leaving everybody alone and leaving the power stations alone like they should. Just leave everything alone. So I think the summer is a perfectly valid time to check your panels and check your batteries. Yeah, again, I will say though, I don't know how good panels work when it's smoky. So I guess that's a good, interesting question. So yeah, that's my little battery slash. Don't forget to test your stuff, and it's good because it clears the cobwebs out of how your gear works. So, all right, this is future valid and interrupting this segment for a little bit. I want to give this next part some context before I dig into it. I'm going to talk about equity, diversity, inclusion a lot. Whoa, what just happened? Gotta fix my mouse one of these days. So, I am not against hiring diversities. Having a diverse work environment, hiring marginalized identities and so on. I'm not against any of that. What has happened though, and I think a lot of the left has realized this, and a lot of minorities have realized that they have been tokenized, just like the LGBT community has realized that it has become tokenized and again used as stepping stones, just like everybody else. And I was reading through, I read a lot of LinkedIn, and this poster, I don't know where they actually got this from. They're acting like it's their own quote. I think it's somebody else's. It says, folks with marginalized identities can excel in leadership roles in areas other than DEI or HR, especially when provided with equitable access to information, opportunities, and resources. DEI, of course, standing for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which they don't even bother to say anymore. Just like the LGBT. So, interesting, just really quick aside though, when he says, I don't want to assume his gender, but I notice he doesn't have his pronouns, or she. They don't have their pronouns on here. I'm not trying to be a smartass. It's actually kind of... Oh, no, there, okay. No, it was just hiding his pronouns. It's a he, him, okay. I'm not trying to be a smartass here. So, I notice... So DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, I'm not going to call it DEI. I don't know why he couldn't write it out. A lot of these job posts are from people in diversity, equity, inclusion departments or roles, or HR. those are two of the really big posters on LinkedIn, along with recruiters. Those are kind of like the big three, because they're all trying to drum up support. You're probably wondering what this has to do with anything. And it's going to tie in partially because neurodivergence is trying to work its way into diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sorry, Ringo's just deciding to be a part of the party. Come on. So, the problem is neurodiversity is not making its way into diversity, equity, and inclusion like it probably should be. It's also interesting. What's this called? Where it's just like which groups like the most marginalized, like the marginalization. Of course, Ringo is going to choose now to just go bananas. So, which groups like the most marginalized? You know, you run into this huge problem, and they don't allow you to talk about any marginalized group without talking about all of them. And so, usually these begin as cultural or ethnic discussions, but they quickly turn into either ableism or ageism. And then everybody tries to include their group to make sure their group's included. That's because the I in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what happens is just like what happened with the LGBT movement. When feminism used to be its own thing, feminism got co-opted by the LGBT movement, and so on and so forth. Anyway, it gets to be... That's why a lot of this is considered just like far left gibberish, because you either include everything or they start eating each other alive. And so they have a really hard time talking about diversity, but in singling out ethnicity and race. So I'd say like 99% of the time when you hear diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're only talking about race. That is all they're talking about. That's all they can put their pedestal on, right? Diversity, 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 equity, 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 but not inclusion. I don't even know why they include inclusion, because they're not inclusive. However, when you take the training, which I have taken insane amounts of training on this, you're also dealing with folks in wheelchairs, and you're dealing with age as well. It's interesting though, again, I bring this up later, they don't bring up neurodiversity at all. And I'm going to guess a lot of that is brought up in here, where a lot of these, let's be honest, they're almost all left leaning. Giant chunks of LinkedIn is left to far left, with maybe some traditional liberalism thrown in. They very, very, very quickly turn on themselves. Very, 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 very quickly turn on themselves. And they can't even like come up with the same named shit 2 days in a row. See, they call them marginalized identities, which is funny. I was using those terms like 7 years ago. Culture doesn't exist anymore. Ethnicities don't exist anymore. They are identities now. This guy got 2,600 thumbs ups for calling them marginalized identities. And all this is just massive gaslighting. So, for the clicks and the likes, and it's just to boost whatever. So basically what he's trying to say is that your management structure needs to have other ethnicities in it, other than white is the implication. They won't just say that, but that's really what they mean. Because the more people start to unpackage all of this, that's what it's devolved down to. Under equal circumstances, this should be the norm, that all humans can thrive regardless of race or gender, but the biased world we live in necessitates being reminded of the simple fact. That's false. And other people down here that you would think would agree with these sentiments actively contradict them in saying that working your way up the corporate ladder doesn't do you any good because they only promote people that same think as them, regardless of their race or gender. That by default, they're not going to hire people that think differently than them. And if anyone asks what marginalized identities are, people they think they're just so hilarious. They think they're just so funny to just murk on their own people. Alright, this is future me part, I don't know, with Ringo still trying to distract me like he was yesterday. And clawing me, making sure that I can't even get a thought out for like 2 seconds. So where I left off, I was talking about the fact that the lefty-loos tease each other over like marginalized identities, like the fact that culture, race, it's all been wiped out right by them. It's all been homogenized into this identity bucket, just like I said it would in my books years ago. It's all coming to pass exactly like how I would, how I said it would. So I wanted the reason why this interjection is here is that I accidentally, in like the main topic of this podcast, where I start talking about like mutations and neurodivergency and parapsychology and stuff, I skipped over the fact that like you can't these companies, they consider it a win to just hire a different culture or a different ethnicity into their company. They've realized that they've been bamboozled, right? They've been tricked because they get somebody from whatever ethnicity, pick whatever quote unquote marginalized ethnicity you want. You hire one and you get your diversity check box. We hired a whatever ethnicity, right? But like it's usually forgotten that like hiring people of like a certain ethnicity is not the beginning or the end of diversity, equity, inclusion, equal opportunity. What happened was they completely forget about people with physical disabilities, people with mental disabilities, and so on and so forth, because as this post drags on with all the lefty-loos arguing with each other over which group is the most marginalized. Wait, I couldn't think of the word last night either. I can't think of it. I keep wanting to call it like the marginalization Olympics, but I know that's not what it's called. Where they just try to outdo each other over like which group is the most oppressed and the most marginalized and the underutilized. And then so often these arguments devolve into neurodivergence isn't a disability because it can be hidden and overcome. Whereas like somebody in a wheelchair can't hide and overcome the fact that they're in a wheelchair. But I guess I would put that in the air quotes of like, well, I mean, if you force them to come in the office, it's going to be pretty obvious. But if you let them stay home, you could theoretically have a bunch of blind people working for you, and as long as their setups worked pretty well, it wouldn't really matter if they're blind or not. The problem is like, and I unfortunately just like skipped this, and I'll let you still hear the whole thing. I just thought it was important to have context. Having a person in a wheelchair in your company changes absolutely nothing about your company unless you're designing some kind of product around people that like may need to have like wheelchairs. And so from a pragmatic approach, somebody in a wheelchair doesn't really specifically help your company be any better or worse than it already is, unless you're making wheelchairs. That doesn't mean you shouldn't hire them. It just means like, if they're good at what they do, hire them. If they're not good at what they do, then they can go find something else to do. Or you can find something very like wheelchair specific that they can help with if you're like a wheelchair company or doing whatever the heck it is your company, you're this hypothetical company does. Same thing with blind people. Like I've worked with blind people. I've worked at companies where blind people have worked, and I always get like freaked out because all of a sudden there's like a dog. And I'm like, why is there a dog here? And I'm like, oh, there's a blind person. I was like, why is that person walking around with a stick? Oh yeah, it's because they're blind. Make sure they don't get whacked by the door. And so, that's fine. The thing is, like, having a blind person at your job doesn't actually make your job any better unless you're making blind people stuff. So, just no different than having deaf people at your work make anything better or worse than the fact that you're having deaf people work there. And you can say, that's ableist of you. No, it's there's a point that I'm trying to make about all this, which is like in the marginalization Olympics or whatever the hell, I can't think of like the normal term that's coined, like somebody of a certain ethnicity would tell you that their background and their upbringing and the fact that they're from a different ethnicity as you is going to give them some greater benefit of some magic bullshit insight to the fucking universe than somebody in a wheelchair or somebody with whichever kind of like autism or whatever. And so the argument that I try to put forward is that you can fix every single one of those things if there's an issue with your company by having really, really good people working for you that are able to digest and synthesize those ideas, and by having really, really, really good consultants that are whatever. Like, just because you work for a pickup truck company, and I'm gonna take this like to an extreme identity, like for just to prove a point. Let's pretend you're making pickup trucks. Okay? That doesn't mean that everybody in your company has to be cowboys or whatever, because remember, pickup trucks are only for men that are overcompensating. So your pickup truck company doesn't all have to be cowboys with little peepees, like, because they have to be compensating to make sure that you make the best pickup truck possible. That'd be stupid. And it would also be like super, I don't know, like, yeah, oh, and everyone there could only own and drive pickups. Yeah. And they would all have to be men that were cowboys, because that's the only thing that you ever use a pickup truck for. Nothing else. Pickup trucks are literally not used for anything else other than cowboys. Like a rock. You know, like that bullshit, right? So, like, obviously that's satire. Gals drive trucks too, which just blows that whole stupid thing out of the water, and there's about a bajillion 10-gallon hats, and they have to have the longhorn bull horns on their bull catcher on the front. Yeah. So and they have to own an oil rig, and they have to chase around orange cars with Confederate flags on the top. So, right, because we're really gonna just stereotype the living shit out of this to like prove a point. No, of course you don't need those things. You just need people that are really, really good at doing their job, and then you just hire consultants for everything that people use pickup trucks for. And they all only have like one tan arm. And the other arm is like their normal skin color, and their left arm is always tan. Oh, that's just so funny. Anyway, you just have really good consultants, and you bring in lots of test groups, and you have people that are good at synthesizing that information. You don't need a cowboy as your CEO. I know, I'm trying to prove a point by just using a really silly. I'm self-deprecating, so it doesn't seem like I'm picking on different ethnicities. Your left arm is tanned too. Hell yeah. You gotta have your left arm tanned in a pickup truck with longhorn bull horns on your truck and a gun rack. Otherwise, you shouldn't own a pickup truck. So, but I mean, never mind that there's like a bajillion Ford F-150s that everybody uses for work, and our sandy friends and enemies overseas use Ford F1 or no, Toyota Tacomas. Is that what it is? They use Toyota Tacomas for everything. So stereotyping is bullshit, right? You can have a wheelchair company and your CEO doesn't need to be in a wheelchair. Like that's stupid. It doesn't help anything. Like, they're still going to have their own prejudices and biases. And I think some of the people in this chat that I was reading actually talk about, and this is where I almost went the last time I tried to record this, but I'm not sure it came out right. Whoever's the CEO of the company, they pick their next in line usually, and they're all going to pick the same type of person. And if you've got a bunch of shareholders or stockholders or whatever, they're all going to pick this. They're all going to keep picking the same kind of person over and over to lead. It doesn't matter what ethnicity you are. They are going to pick the people that they're used to picking, no matter what ethnicity they are, or if they're in a wheelchair or blind or have robot arms, because they're going to want a certain type of person to run the company. And I have worked for Fortune 500 gigantic multi-trillion-dollar companies, and they always, their CEOs and CFOs are always people from finance. It does not matter what ethnicity they are. It does not matter. They all came off a damn conveyor belt from the finance department. Or, yeah, AP, whatever. So, that's just like the way it is. It has, and so they realize that like diversity hiring has only got their agenda, the check boxes. That's all it's done. Like, if you don't have a culture of like listening to your people, then you could have an entire company full of all the different ethnic diversity on the planet that you want. But if you don't listen to them because your head is up your ass, it doesn't matter, you know, what your ethnicity is. You're not listening to anybody. So, and then you have the fact that none of them want to listen to anyone who's neurodivergent or blind or in a wheelchair. Like, the whole planet is full of prejudices, and nobody wants to listen to anybody. Never mind, you've got cultures that can't stand women running around. Holy shit, that's a clusterfuck right there. Like, you've got ethnicities that think that women should be running around in bedsheets with no education. How the hell do you reconcile that? Tell me how you reconcile that for a second, when as soon as they see an ankle out of the corner of their eye, they can't function for the rest of the day. Explain that to me. Oh, are you telling me that which one of those people is being culturally insensitive? Like, tell me this. Or when you've got places on the planet where they see a certain ethnicity and gender and they bust into the cafe where they're eating and just beat the shit out of all of them, cut them with glass, and just pummel a certain ethnicity of gender senseless, even though they are the opposite ethnicity and gender. Like, which one of those groups is being insensitive? Like, you're always going to be catering to whichever side is willing to be the most violent and cutthroat. It's always going to be that way. So, it doesn't matter. Like, just because there's a certain ethnicity and gender that's cool to poke fun at right now, that's okay and hip and cool to poke fun at, what are you going to do when they're gone? Who are you going to blame? Because that certain ethnicity and gender aren't who's being blamed around the whole planet. So there's massive amounts of like racism and bigotry, hatred and violence going on around the whole planet. And it's just tribalism, and it's boiled down to identity. And even though there's people that are trying to co-opt neurodivergency, it really should be a part of the conversation. And that is the point I'm trying to make. Because if neurodivergency is the next evolution in people who are leaping way ahead of everybody else in terms of like raw productivity, as long as they can be focused, and if all your company cares about is like the raw output of being able to like solve and resolve ideas and people who are going to be highly specialized in certain things, you're not going to want your folks that are neurodivergent and like potentially different like parapsychology advents. You're not going to want those people to just blend in and be quiet and never use those people to their full potential. Because how do you use somebody who their only redeeming factor, according to your company profile that you put together for them, is that they're a different ethnicity? Well, and now what I'm trying to get at is not only that, but you've boiled that down to they're just a different identity. How do you rank the value of each identity? How do you say that somebody that likes to come to work in a rabbit costume is more or less valuable based purely on their identity than somebody else that has a robot arm or something, or somebody who dresses very flamboyantly How do you quantify that? How do you rank that based on identity? And that's what they're going to want to do. But then they're going to say, oh, certain ethnicities can hide it. And that's the whole point of like part 2 of this, which is, why do they want people with neurodivergency to just hide it and just act normal? And I can't remember which one of these it is, but like having a leader who is somewhere on the spectrum isn't going to automatically make it better for everybody else who's on the spectrum either. Like, because it's just normal to them and they're just going to work as best as they can work. And if you try to explain it to them, it's probably not going to do you any good. Because they're good at their one or two things and that's it. And instead these people want to just blame the oppressors. But how many companies are ran by ethnicities? How many... Hey, don't hate on the person that comes to work in the rabbit costume, okay? There's lots of people who like to come to work in rabbit costumes. That doesn't necessarily mean they're bad people. So, but what if all of a sudden the boss comes to work in a rabbit costume? Does that mean it's going to make it better for everybody else who comes to work in rabbit costumes? Probably not. Almost assuredly not. Because they, unless their goal is to spread their identity instead of just doing their job, it's not going to matter, because you already have plenty of companies ran by minorities, ran by the other gender. I guarantee you a lot of companies ran by the ladies doesn't magically make it better for the other ladies, because if that was the case, then HR would be wonderful instead of anarchy. And HR is just chaos, right? What company makes the rabbit costumes? The Wascally Wabbit. The Wascally Wabbit Corporation. So, holy shit, the dog's barking. So, yeah, I don't. Maybe I missed it. Plus the people who make mole costumes are gonna get upset at your whack-a-mole comments. They'll be like, "Hey, what are you trying to say? What did the moles do? Don't whack the mole." But they even say, when leadership teams represent a variety of identities and backgrounds, they better meet the needs and challenges of diversity and facilitate more holistic decision making. No, they don't. They don't, because they're just doing their job. They're not trying to further their identity. You have major companies and corporations ran by different identities, and it has not done anything to further the identity. What they do is they put them on a pedestal, like a park at the dog. they put them on a pedestal like a celebrity. That's all they do. Like, I mean, it may empower like one or two other people to not feel like they're as marginalized, when typically nobody gives a shit. But like, you're not going to have a company that makes pickup trucks suddenly completely like change what they do or how they behave because someone of like a different ethnicity takes over, like, or our identity, like having like the mother, you know, having a special room for like mothers at companies. Like, that could just happen because people use common sense and realize that mothers need their own rooms when they come back to work with refrigerators and stuff that are locked and secure, so people can't steal their milk because they're freaking weirdos, right? That already happens at companies now that don't have the mommy rooms, that don't have like the locked fridges. These are companies that make tons and tons of money. They should know way better. They have all the different, we don't discriminate XYZ, but they do. They do. They still have horrible things happening at their companies, like to have a paradigm shift to where culture pulls its head out of its ass and starts actually being kind and conscientious to each other requires all of our culture to change. Not having more identities up at the top. Like different identities represented. And I'll probably pause it and see if I can find it in here. But I scrolled down enough, and eventually it went from, by harnessing the power of diverse talent, we can create stronger, more resilient teams and achieve extraordinary... No, you're not going to have more resilient teams and achieve extraordinary results. You're going to get groupthink when you're building your teams off of trying to purely have equity, or they're not going to get along at all. While I'm trying to find this, what I want to say is, if you want to have the best recruitment, to recruit the best and brightest people, I think this was like the major point that I wanted to make that I didn't get to. When you have your different focus groups, and you're trying to get, you know, the best feedback for what the next pickup truck is you need, and you happen to come across somebody, no matter what identity they are, but they happen to be really, really bright and smart, and regardless of if they're a little quiet or whatever, or they wear different weirdo like clothes that are weird to you because they're different than yours, but if they're bright and they're smart and they can like get their information out somehow, and they're like articulate and they can give you good feedback, then just consider recruiting that person. Like, that shit is not difficult. And it's the same thing with like colleges, and it's the same thing with low income. Like low income, which is usually what's targeted with diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you're in the cities, it tends to be the alphabets, but really the most marginalized groups end up being poor communities. When you're there working on their infrastructure, just use those opportunities to recruit. Then you can have equitable opportunities. Instead, like I was talking about on an earlier podcast, well, maybe I didn't get to cover it, but they were talking about this weird, like, backwards ass idea where if you have people working from home, then you screw over all the people in the city. Or if you force but then they, in the same argument, use the fact that if you make everyone come back in the office, you screw everybody in the rural areas. Like, the shit is not, I mean, neither one of those are like really right or wrong, but accurate or inaccurate, but it just emphasizes the point that, like, if you're working on the infrastructure in a poor community and you run into people who seem to be able to articulate themselves really well and seem to have good ideas, you bring them on as a consultant, and then if they seem to be able to work well, you just hire them. Boom. Like, problem solved. I don't give a shit if they're in a high chair or a wheelchair or in a rabbit costume. And like you said, they have you can have offices in rural areas. I have been screaming about that for years. It is so stupid that they don't just have more offices. Like, goodness knows, with like the commercial crash right now, like there's whole streets, there's whole blocks and blocks and blocks that are just empty. Now, yeah, it's all really expensive, and somebody needs to tell the city and tell the banks to stop charging an arm and a leg. But like, you can just have an office. I know this is going to be scary. Whoa. You know, that low income area that you're working on. Whoa, you could have an office there. Oh no. And then you could hire the best and brightest from there. Whoa, and people could have jobs. Instead of like dragging everybody's asses out to corporate headquarters, which, I'm sorry, when gas is like, well, it doesn't even have to be in an old ice cream shop. It could be in it could be in a current ice cream shop. You could have your ice cream and do your work. Like, this shit is not difficult. Like, I am not that smart of a person. Like, I can eat ice cream and work at the same time. Like, the problem is, they want to have all these cutesy little, they want to have their like flags for their 1 week a month. And they want to have their little like coffee mug. They want to sell their coffee mug. And act like I'm helping. And it's like, you're not helping. You're making more money off of identity, right? If you want to help low-income communities, go put an office in the low-income community and start hiring some of them that are the ones that want to work hard and the ones that want to work together. You know, start with consultants if you want. Use them to work on your help you with your ideas that you need, because they're the ones that live in it every day. And actually listen to what they say, you know, and then try to make something that's going to work for them and follow up with them. You know what's funny? I don't know if this is what you were I don't know if this is what you meant to say. But there was this place I was working for, or not work, I was applying for it. They had an office that was like really crazy far away. And they had a private bus pickup in town that you got there at a certain time, and the bus drove you for like an hour to the office, and you got paid for the whole bus ride there and back. And I think you only had to work like a 6-hour day, and they actually like paid you an hour each way for the bus, and you didn't have to pay for the bus. They paid you to ride the bus. You got your full rate. And they had, yeah, and so and they ran these buses you know, multiple times a day, so you could go to and from work, because they knew it was really far. Like, I'm like, holy shit, like, that's fucking amazing. I wanted that damn job so bad. I was in the final 2, and they said they were going to hire 2 people, and I couldn't get a hold of them anymore. No matter how many damn people I called. Like, all their emails, it really sucked. They went through a shakeup, I think. But they're a huge company. They still exist, I think. They had some turnover in their recruiters or something. I couldn't get a hold of anybody. But these things are solvable. These things are achievable. It has nothing to do with hiring somebody from a different identity or ethnicity. just hire people that don't have their head up their ass and that have some empathy for other people. And then you hire a bunch of people that can process ideas really well. Like, instead, yeah, and I'll try to find it. A lot of these people are just snarky bullshit. And some of them, you know, they say they just need the opportunity. But that doesn't mean putting them in executive positions is going to work. Like, you have to get in a company, and then you have to get a culture that works for the company to be successful. It doesn't have to do with people's culture. It has to do with getting culture, and then that works. But then, like, less unconscious bias. What? Has nothing to do with unconscious bias. Like, ethnicity has nothing to do with unconscious bias. Like, people can be unconsciously biased towards anything. And then all they do, I friggin' swear, this shit is ridiculous. I don't even want to say these things, because it's like there's like a spectrum of like the people who are considered the most marginalized and the least marginalized, and some of these folks on the left are some of like the most ludicrously openly racist, openly, like, with their full name, openly racist towards like a certain ethnicity, because that ethnicity is okay to be racist too, because it's the current popular race and gender that's okay to hate. Yeah, I wonder if everything got deleted, where they were just telling everybody, if you're neurodivergent, just hide it. We don't want to hear about it. But what initially drove me to, part of what drove me to have this side discussion is this he him that is a diverse individual. He says, I've been utterly disrespected publicly in leadership roles before, and the perpetrator was basically promoted. Why subject myself to more of that, shrug. I just want to work and feed my family, don't care about power or politics. And I think this person's like, he hits the nail on the head. Like, if you think that you're going to get magically respected regardless of what identity you are, just because you're in a position of power, like, if you don't drink the Kool-Aid and toe the line, they're gonna undercut you and rug pull you and get you out of there because you won't toe the line. Because if you believe, and I think tons of the left is getting this. Yeah, I saw that. That was pretty funny. Crap. Pause this. I think I lost my train of thought really quick. So I keep reading what this person says over and over and over, because there's just so much truth to this. Like, tons of the left has realized that corporations are just making money off them and that they don't give a shit. And they're all kind of realizing it at their own paces. But I think they're all, some of them, the blame is misplaced. So there was this guy, I think it was, and he went to the Target and he wanted to buy his coffee mug that said, like, I'm gender fluid, and he thought it was funny because there's like fluid that goes in a mug and it's a pun. And I'm like, that is pretty funny. And then like he couldn't buy it because they said it's been like recalled. And who knows if the story is even true, but we'll pretend it is. Obviously, like, he should be able to buy the mug because this is America and you should be able to buy a mug, especially if you think it's funny. Like, because it's America and it was on the shelf, and I don't give a shit if it has a rainbow on it or not. You're an adult and it's a mug and you think it's funny and you drink coffee and whatever. But supposedly they wouldn't sell it to him. They said it's been recalled. And he said, like, he said the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. He said, like, Target is being held hostage as if people deciding to not spend their money somewhere is some kind of like financial terrorism or something. And it's like, no, we're just like, people with income can decide to not buy things, and that's the way it goes, and they're corporations and they're going to go with whoever has more money, and I'm not running out and buying a rainbow coffee mug, so sorry. Although like, maybe I would have bought that as a gift for somebody, but I'm not going to Target ever since they did the bathroom thing ages ago. To me the Target thing has nothing to do with pride flags or the weird tucking bathing suits, which is just fucking creepy. Yeah, economic hostage. Like, with me, it was the bathroom thing. Like, years ago, you shouldn't be having guys go into the girls' bathroom when there's girls and they're trying to use the bathroom. Like, it's really that simple. It's really that simple for me. There, if you're gonna have a family bathroom, have a family bathroom. It's really cut and dry. Like, leave kids alone. It's that simple. So, I didn't do anything horrible to them. I just stopped shopping there. So if they want to consider you terrorists for doing that, then that's whatever. But like, they don't see the other part of that, which is like, these companies have been pandering to their culture and their community, their identity this whole time. They don't actually care. And of course, if it's an emergency, I think everybody's going to understand that. And I've talked about this like many times. The guy's bathroom has tons of stalls that the guys almost never use. Like, it's common sense to just let a gal use the bathroom. The guys have tons of stalls that they don't use. If everyone's mature, it's like not a big deal. The problem is you get a lot of people that aren't mature, and all of a sudden it becomes a big deal when guys want to be in the gal's bathroom when they don't need to be. So, anyway, I just won't go into a Target. And I can decide to do that. I don't have to go there and like pledge my patronage to them. I don't. Not to mention that pretty much every store is a giant damn war zone now. There's a guy in there taking a crap. Hell yeah. Then you can all have fart battles or whatever. I don't know. I don't really care. It's just guys shouldn't be going into the girls' bathroom when there's girls in there, and they don't need to be going in there. It's very cut and dry. It's very simple. It's a very, very simple thing. And I think a lot of people on both sides of the aisle and all the different ethnicities and stuff, people that I never thought that I would agree with anything on, they see their niece or their daughter or their granddaughter go into a bathroom, and they see a full-grown adult male go in the bathroom after them. It's a very base instinct to see that that's not something that should be happening. I don't care what ethnicity or race you are. So yeah, so I'm not going to go to Target. And the guy can, if that's the only bathroom, the guy can wait for a few minutes. He doesn't need to be there in the same time as he can wait. So super tangent here. The point is like, Target doesn't give a shit about you. It absolutely. Target doesn't give a shit about them. They never did. Target does not care. They're using it to make money. And they're going to go with whichever way makes money. That's my point. And a lot of the left, this happened with the BLM movement too. They're like, why are there all these corporations making money off Black Lives Matter and police brutality and kids getting killed in the streets and stuff? Like, why are corporations making money off this? Isn't that kind of weird? And I think more people are like waking up to just how fake it is. Not to mention like Budweiser and that whole creepy sideshow. So they're realizing that like they're being played. And it's unfortunate that some of them have to work all the way up to the top to leadership positions. Work their way up to like leadership positions to realize that they've been played and that nobody actually gives a shit about. Nobody in their company gives a shit that they're like a minority or a different ethnicity or identity or whatever. Like it. Whereas like, again, I'll go back to like nerd culture. If we're all playing video games together and you have a person in a rabbit costume and a person that dresses like a fairy and a person that dresses like a wizard and a person that's has a paper bag over their head, you put all these people in a room and they're all playing video games. They're all just going to play video games. They're going to get along and they're going to be fine, no matter how socially awkward they all are. Like, that's how nerd culture has always been. And a lot of the toxicity with like women in gamer culture was just because there's pieces of shit in the world. And it's up to each culture to self-police itself and get those pieces of shit out of there. But with corporate culture, you don't have that. There's no way to like it takes forever to clean up like toxic corporate culture. Hiring people with different backgrounds. At most, it just means you're going to smell different food during lunch. Until you can actually turn the culture around. But again, just to keep circling back around, like, none of that, I think, is going to boost your company as much as actually having higher performing people and having ways to hire and recruit and retain higher performing people. And companies that keep saying that they aren't coming after your kids when clearly their marketing material implies that they're coming after your kids, I think tells you all that you need to know. And people on both sides are waking up to the fact that they're getting played and there's some weird think tank somewhere that is making everybody waste their time on every other stupid thing than what's the most obvious, especially in these like huge down economies. Trying to hire people who are top performers at what they do. Like this she/her says, you can't add diversity to a leadership team and expect leadership dynamics to stay the same. You can't give people from marginalized backgrounds a seat at the table and expect them to share the same lived experiences and point of view who have had the seat for years. Changing leadership, culture, and policy is key. And that's why, like, I read from both sides. I listen to both sides because there is a lot of people on the left that are waking up and they're realizing that they've got played. And that's why we all have to have a place where we can all talk to each other, because they don't want us talking to each other. They don't want us being able to read each other's thoughts and have discourse. They want to just keep pushing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that is going to be the downfall, because there are think tanks running all of these companies, right? They tell you what to do. There was this thing that Anheuser-Busch just said that, like, they were tanked on purpose. I just read it a couple hours ago. Like, this strategic entrepreneurial methodology that they do, where they target their philanthropy with these, like, crazy think tanks with hundreds of millions of dollars behind it. I think they're tanking companies with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then telling them to ignore or marginalize or tell anybody with any semblance of neurodivergency that could actually be specialized in anything. They treat them like crap. They tell them to hide it. They tell them to shut up. They tell them to act normal. And then they act like everything is just, like, deserved. And that anyone who's loyal gets taken advantage of, whether they're left or right or up or down or green or blue. And I think the hardest workers are realizing that their psychological and, like, mental well-being is being exploited so they can hire diverse people that already don't get along and that aren't necessarily high performers just based off of their diversity. I've seen whole groups of people with the same ethnicity not get along at all. Like, you're still going to have an alpha. On top of that, you're still going to have groupthink. Like, you can foster an inclusive environment that don't mutually respect each other worth shit, because to you they may all look the same and they may have all checked the same box. But shit, when we were working with India, holy cow, like, not only do they have the caste system that you have to worry about trying to untangle that, but you have the fact that, like, certain groups of them just freaking hate each other. And that's not even getting into, like, Indian versus, like, the whole Muslim, like, Indian Pakistani, like, split and stuff. Like, you can't just, like, check a box and hire a bunch of people and pat yourself on the back to have, like, a high performing team. Oh, it was a mess. And you're like, and they don't all speak the same language, and even if they do speak the same language, they don't understand each other. India's huge. It's like somebody from New York trying to talk to somebody from Texas, except they speak half the same sort of ish language. It's like someone from Mexico trying to talk to somebody from Spain, except worse, and they fucking hate each other. So, but again, that's why just so much of this that's why, like, so much about diversity, equity, and inclusion is racist. Having people check a box and then hiring them based on the checkbox, I don't know. To me, that's racist. And I bet you I've sat more through more diversity, equity, and inclusion training in a year or two than most people have their entire life. Like this, he, him says, park the minorities where you can beef up the stats, but we keep the money. Man, I wish I could find where they just basically told all the neurodivergent people that they just need to keep their mouth shut and act normal. I wonder if all that stuff got deleted. I have been noticing that if you don't take screenshots, some of this stuff goes away. So, back to... I think I covered all the points I wanted to. The rest of this episode is going to be about neurodivergency and like some parapsychology, which is where I think everything's really headed. Oh, you're too kind. Thank you. And then I think I'm gonna pause here, and then I think I'm gonna add something at the very end. So I'm gonna pause here. I'm going to write these file names down really quick, and then I'm going to kind of redo the ending a little bit. So, PRB. So this next part that you're about to hear is kind of where the original second topic started. Thousands and thousands of years, but every few hundred millennia, evolution leaps forward. So, yeah, I'll tell you at the end of the episode what that was from, unless you already know, in which case you're really smart, and if you had to look it up, then you're a cheater. So, on my LinkedIn doom scrolling, I kept seeing neurodiversity pop up, and I'm not gonna, like, super duper try hard, although I probably should. So, neurodiversity is a buzzword that, of course, I'm not going to be able to find it now. I should just like pause it and keep looking. I always find things like, let's see. The word neurodiversity refers to the diversity of all people, but is often used in the context of autism, spectrum disorder, ASD, as well as other neurological or developmental conditions such as ADHD or learning disabilities. The neurodiversity movement emerged during the 1990s, aiming to increase acceptance and inclusion of all people while embracing neurological differences. So the term was coined by Judy Singer, an Australian sociologist, and really, I think it wasn't exactly trying to hide the fact that she was trying to get it baked into the other SJW movements, which I don't remember. I remember very little of in the late 90s. I just remember the late 90s was a different place and a different time. And don't remember the SJW stuff hitting really hard until recently, where certainly I don't think neurodiversity or neurodivergence, which is those are two different things that sound like one of them is a singular and one of them is a plural, but neurodiversity is like trying to work it into like diversity, equity, inclusion, whereas like neurodivergence itself revolves around how distracting pop-ups are when you're trying to think. No. Autistic spectrum disorder, aka ASD, aka the new word for autism. But I saw some graphics that include a bunch of things that I don't know. So take this with a grain of salt. Some of these, like dyslexia, okay, I get it. ADHD, OCD, I kind of get it. Some of these like make sense. Other ones like trauma, I guess if it's talking about like PTSD, Tourette's, I kind of get it. A lot of these are just like buzzwords though. The main key around this, if you think about like neurodiversity, is that there isn't like a baseline. There isn't like a one size fits all reoccurring theme. And I took a couple of the tests, and even though every test basically said the same thing about me, I noticed that all the tests ask different questions. I could see how people get confused, like loud noises, crowds, like being an introvert versus like an extrovert. I noticed there was like a lot of those questions which could make a lot of people borderline. But I also noticed like on these cute little charts, they don't have like bipolar, schizophrenic. Like, it just seems like they have some of the more like social norms, and it's like, well, I guess being schizophrenic doesn't mean you're neurodivergent. Like, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Maybe it's the difference between like chemicals versus like brain development. I have no idea. And maybe it doesn't matter, or maybe it matters, and maybe they're two parts of the same coin. I don't know. The interesting thing though is that the more I thought about it, and obviously like I'm sure this is going to come off as insanely insensitive to some people who don't see it this way, but the more I thought about this, the more this just like, and also I think one of the things that like really broke the idea open in my head was like how there's been like a huge spike in ASD. Let's see. I'm trying to get like some of this right, so it just doesn't seem like I pull the stuff out of my ass. Unfortunately, what ends up happening is I end up spending like too much time taking this way too seriously, and then nobody ends up watching it anyway. Because the cases of ASD have like doubled since when? So well, pre-ASD when it's just autism, the whole thing started in 1980 when they first started kind of formally recognizing it, even though people were diagnosed with it like way before then. I'm trying to figure out like which year, like 91, 94, something like that. Like it started just like spiking like crazy, and then by 2006 they wanted to start screening everybody for it. So at first I was thinking like this was just another way for medicine companies to just get people hooked on medicine at as young of an age as possible. If you think about, the Rona trying to get everyone dependent on something on a reoccurring, whether you believe in any of it or not, like, understand that, like, they want to get everybody hooked on something forever, like a subscription service to frickin' Netflix, where you have to be reliant on them for medicine forever. Because that's how they make metric shit tons of money. Same thing with like fast food and everything. They want to get you hooked on shit forever. So, in the 90s, it was like put all the kids on Ritalin, which, ADD is considered a part of neurodivergence, which I get that. And then, in the early 2000s, it was like, put all the kids on Adderall, and then all of a sudden kids are hooked on Adderall all the way through college. Then they graduate and they start their job, and to keep in front of everybody, they just stay on Adderall forever. And then they can never get off it. So, and then you have, interestingly enough, you have anxiety on here. And, they can just keep you on like anxiety pills like forever. And, causation, you can say, well, maybe they caused neurodiversity so they could just keep everybody on pills forever. But what if that's like not the case? Like, what if they're trying to stop us from mutating and growing and being smarter than all the normies? Like, what if you've felt like you've never fit in because you really are better than everybody else? Like, what if you really are smarter than everybody else? Everybody else really is stupid. What if the baseline is actually that everybody else really, actually, legitimately is freaking stupid? And I'm sure, people that they can only screech, or people that have like nervous tics to where they can barely talk, I'm sure they don't feel like they have superpowers. So I kind of get that. But like, we grew up, everyone like, oh, predictive programming, this and that. Like, we grew up watching a lot of things that in hindsight now have become insanely prevalent. The first of which, Ninja Turtles, which, guess what? They're mutants. They're better, faster, stronger than everybody. And what are they doing? They're fighting people that are all dressed in black, that wear black masks, that are stealing shit and breaking and busting up everything. So, what the hell does that tell you? Like people like knew about this shit, right? So like, then, you have obviously the X-Men. Everybody gets mad. Hey, how's it going? Doing our podcast. You have people who are mutants that are better than everybody else. Maybe they look a little different. Maybe they act a little different. And what's the first thing everyone tries to do? Kill them, right? And so what do? They like make a special school for gifted youngsters, right? And ironically enough, like this neurodiversity graph that I'm looking at has gifted as one of the things that makes them like neurodivergent. And I'm not gonna say necessarily that gifted implies like parapsychology, but like people that can see into the future, people that, and I don't mean like these fake bullshit empaths. I mean like people know that shit's gonna happen like all the time. They just keep it to themselves because they know they can't really do much about it, right? But like, what if all along the norm has just been that people are really, really, really stupid, and we are the evolution of that? Like, people who can actually like I mean, and I know you could fast forward to the movie like Idiocracy and be like, well, anyone who can think at all is going to be like having superpowers in 20 years, and like that's only because everybody's getting stupider. So like, just like in, you know, X-Men and Ninja Turtles, there's no baseline for people who are excelling. There's only a baseline for just how stupid the normies are, right? And I guess it's easy to say that, oh, X-Men, the mutants and stuff, that was about, you know, either segregation or an allegory for racism or the LGBT movement or whatever. But like, the whole point of the gal that coined neurodiversity was trying to lump people who were neurodivergent into the SJW movement, like the alphabet, the LGBT and everything else, but not in a way to radicalize them, but a way to get them to be accepted as being different by hiring standards. And the Rona lockdowns were another way to where neurodivergent people had things both way better and way worse. They didn't have to have their masks on. I mean, they're like their social mask. I don't mean like the literal masks. They didn't have to fake who they were. Like, people who were neurodivergent got to actually be themselves for a couple years. You know, they actually just got to sit at home and work and just be normal with their own versions of normal. And it was really liberating. They finally got a taste of what it was like to not have to get crammed in to situations 8-9 hours a day, not counting quote unquote happy hours. You know, is sitting at work getting forced, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion down your throat 24/7. Meanwhile, knowing that you're like leaps and bounds smarter than everybody else, and getting none of the credit because the fact that you're different isn't recognized because it's not visible, and everybody else is different visually, and they, you know, they get all the benefits, which is very strange. And so LinkedIn people have been trying to bring neurodivergence back into the discussion in the form of neurodiversity. And I feel like almost like we're on the precipice of everybody finally maybe having to accept that there are reasons why some people are smarter than others in some capacities. Obviously, you have folks that naturally learn faster, people that naturally remember things easier, people who can think way more abstract, which is different from someone who's just done the job for a long time. But you can have someone who does a job for a long time that still can't handle change at all, because they can't think outside the box at all. They've been taught to press a button forever, and that's all they do is they press the button forever. And they're really good at pressing the button, That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who excel. People who are able to think outside the box. And maybe that's not something that can be taught. You know, maybe that is something that we're born with or that we inherited somehow, and maybe our brains really are growing differently. Like, maybe we really are special, even though on the surface we sort of look like everybody else. But maybe we are really, really, really different and really, really special. And maybe we really are way smarter and better than everybody else. And guess how we get treated? We get treated like shit because we're not like everybody else. And, you know, we get headaches and we don't like loud noises. And we don't like hanging out with the cool kids. And so guess what we do? We get shoved to the back, we get shunned, we get made fun of, we get mocked because we're socially awkward. Chat says maybe it's how you were raised. So, alright, I took a break. You want laser eyes? Hell yeah. So yeah, I guess now's a good time to say if everyone could have a mutant power, what would it be? And leave a comment down below. So yeah, I ate really quick, but the discussion where we left off was, could it be genetic? Could it be how you're raised? I think the answer to all those things is yes, because I think it has to do with your brain's development. You know, so if you went through a traumatic period and develop, you know, anxiety, and you develop like new coping mechanisms, you know, that are outside of what a normie develops just living a normal life, then yeah. Or if you had some kind of crazy PTSD, like, they're not always necessarily like positive things. It's just, it's what makes you different and unique, which eventually will make you think differently than everybody else, right? Like, that's the whole thing. Like, true diversity is thinking different than everybody else. Has nothing to do with your ethnicity at all. You can have a bunch of ethnicities live in exactly the same place, do exactly the same things. They're all with the same indoctrination, and they're all going to think exactly the same. Like, ethnicity, people think different if they're different ethnicities because they grew up in different places under different circumstances. And that can be the same for someone who grew up in an abusive... That was weird. I just heard talking. Why did I just hear talking? That was weird. I just heard my own voice. That's freaky. Don't know where that came from. So, where was I? That was creepy. Yeah, if someone grew up in an abusive household, they're going to think differently than somebody who grew up in a privileged household. Someone that had to like work harder for everything is going to think differently. Well, I'm always talking to myself. The difference there is that there was a different me talking into my ears. I was saying one thing, but the me in my ears said something different. It was really weird. Yeah. So that just completely derailed. Now you're all making fun of me. Your dentist has a 3D printer. That's freaking rad. Oh yeah, you guys, yep, keep making fun of me. That's cool. Yeah. So I can't, so I get distracted easily, and that's my big negative, is I get distracted easily. And that was another part of the topic that I wanted to bring up, because my web browser constantly adds new features, and the features are on by default. And that's something that is extremely frustrating to me. And Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel both turn on new features by default constantly, and so does Edge. Microsoft is notorious for turning on new features that they don't take into consideration people whose brains work different. And I get frustrated, and if I can't turn it off really fast, usually because it's named something stupid or hidden or buried somewhere, I completely get derailed, then I get frustrated, then I feel defeated, and then I shut down. And I have to shut down before I melt down, and all of my momentum's lost, all my creativity's gone, and the new stupid bullshit widget that they added just ruined me, for a lack of a better term. You might say, oh, you're a snowflake, like XYZ. It's like, so when you have a creative brain, that's not even my Achilles heel. That's just software being stupid. Although I think you all know by now, if you derail me in chat enough, that I can't continue anymore, and I shut down. I mean, I don't think that's a big surprise. That's also why I just mute and ban people who do it on purpose. Because I think it's insanely disruptive and rude when people do it on purpose and just immediately make the chat about themselves instead of like vibing with the topic. Especially when people just come in and then emotionally dump on everybody and then leave. Like, a lot of my rules have revolved around that. Oh, your phone. Yes. Phones are one of the most notorious bugaboos for that. So are cars. All the new cars with like 10 million bullshit things in them. Like, I need, when you have a creator brain, you need like direct, unfettered, unfiltered access to what you're creating. And if there's any widgets in there, they need to not be in your way. And it frustrates me to no end, because people think the whole squirrel thing is such a huge fucking joke. They think it's so funny. They think it is so hilarious. And it's just like, again, it just feels like you're being made fun of, because if you're distracted by something stupid like a fucking squirrel, you're just an idiot and a chucklehead, right? Like, that's different. You're just an idiot. That's different from like getting completely derailed and having to stop everything before you fucking melt down. So, like, there's a difference between people with just very, very, very simple brains that have zero attention span and think everything is hilarious, versus people who are actually trying to create and seems like the world is like catering to mushy brains who need to have 5,000 widgets on the damn screen. So what was the last thing you mentioned? Cars. Yeah, exactly. I don't ever want to own a car newer than like an 06, 07, like 08 at the latest. Yeah, you guys think you're like super funny bringing up animals, but you're kind of just like proving my point. Like, if you're just like not getting the point on purpose, then that's cool, but like I hope you really get my point. I'm obviously not talking about animals, I'm talking about people. Like, I don't think making jokes about this stuff is very funny, which I think was my point. Like, it is frustrating that people joke about this. My whole point was that I have to deal with people making jokes about this a lot, and it's not funny. It is really, really annoying, especially when you're driving with somebody that's doing it. It's not even offensive, it's just like, there was this one guy, and this is like what I was thinking of. He was doing it while driving, and then I don't think he was realizing that he was also like almost like swerving towards like invisible squirrels that didn't even exist. And it was just like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, this isn't funny. Like, you're just making me motion sick, and you're derailing the conversation. Like, exactly. Like, yes, let's go play telephone pole tag. And that kind of gets me to like the last point I wanted to make. I was watching a YouTube video earlier, and 10 seconds into the YouTube video, there was a bunch of like flashing. You know, people think that like flashing is really cool on, you know, movies and video games. Flashing is gives me like an instant migraine. I don't go into seizures like some people do, but like, does that make you neurodivergent? I don't know. Is vertigo like a part of like neurodivergence? I don't know. But like, it makes you wonder, you know, it's easy to say like things like, okay, deja vu, you know, a lot of that like parapsychology stuff. I think a lot of it ties together, which is why so much of it ties together in the books. But like, it really makes you wonder if like, if photosensitivity, which I think is the word for people who can have epilepsy based on flashing, it makes me wonder like if that's a lot of it too. And I haven't seen a lot. I haven't seen like a big topic that covers all of it. My roommates are being really loud as usual. They're walking by yelling instead of just talking to each other. So yeah, some vertigo can definitely be fixed. Some of it can't, though. Some people's vertigo, they have no idea why it happens. There's tons of different reasons that vertigo can happen, and they're not all the same. There isn't anything that can fix mine, unless they come up with some kind of new medicine. So they can fix some things, like the whole world, you know, like rolling backwards or rolling forwards on you. Like, some of those things they can fix, possibly. You know, they can fix having like tension headaches with like muscle relaxers. There's some like new medicines that can fix some types of migraines, like sometimes. And they have a few that are like preventative, which is probably what I should have taken. I should have taken one earlier when my brain was feeling really squishy, but I kind of forget because when I have a headache, I forget which medicines I should take for which headaches because I have a headache and I can't think. That's why it helps to have someone remind you. But no, there's people that end up in the hospital with vertigo and they're stuck there for months until it just goes away. It could be swelling in the brain. You know, your ears could be screwed up. So yeah, I guess like if vertigo is purely an ear thing, then I guess that wouldn't make you like neurodivergent in and of itself, but like eventually you turn into a different person from having to deal with it, and then maybe that would make you, maybe those experiences of you having to like hold your head certain ways and having to be really, you know, careful walking off of curbs so you don't just fall, or stairs. You start avoiding stairs like crazy. You start avoiding curbs like crazy because you can just trip and fall just by walking around because your body all of a sudden just misjudges where your foot's supposed to go and you just go flying. Which is different from people just being idiots and walking into traffic and just walking off curbs. Again, I ran into one of those. She wasn't more of like a squirrel. She was more of like a butterfly. Oh, butterfly. And she walked off curbs and fell constantly. And she walked into traffic constantly. However, she was also really, really, really smart. And so I think she was probably a balance between completely, totally oblivious, but also really, really smart. So we had to constantly run in front of cars for her to make sure they wouldn't just plow her over. Because if you ever saw the Mr. Magoo, a few of you are old enough to remember the Mr. Magoo show. She would just flat out walk into traffic. She would walk right in front of cars. She was off in La La Land. But she was also, I think I had it paused when I was talking about this, but like, she was super high functioning. And that's not to say that there's something called low functioning. I'm not saying that at all, but she operated at an extremely high level when she wasn't walking into traffic chasing butterflies. Yeah, that's right. We called it chasing butterflies. So yeah, she was very, very, very high up, and she had tons of education and certificates behind her too, and she was extremely creative. So I guess both of those things can coexist. So I think that's the last point I wanted to make. I think neurodiversity has a long way to go. I can't imagine it's ever going to be adopted because it doesn't fit the narrative. But I think it should. I think it would be awesome for that to be recognized. Don't think it's ever going to happen though, and I think a problem is there's a lot of people who are co-opting it because it's the new thing, it's the new bandwagon that they can jump on. And again, I have a neighbor who is stuck in a wheelchair who can only make noises. So like I know that it's not all like peaches and cream. Like I get that. The gal that I watched on YouTube, see if I can find it. She used kind of a word that I liked, talking about it being more like, instead of like a spectrum on a line being like a quantum, like a quantum spectrum. Like, what the hell? Stupid shorts. Holy shit, I hate fucking shorts. See, again, there you go. I'm like, I gotta try just like so hard to not get derailed. Okay. I'll pause it while I look. So, on YouTube, Sabine Hassenfelder has some really good videos, and she's really frank. I don't think she's always right. I don't think she does tons of research, but I think she does enough. A lot of her more recent stuff's been talking about transhumanism. I don't think she completely gets transhumanism. But there's more than one way of interpreting transhumanism, so I kind of get that. That's a whole topic for like another day. But yeah, like, I don't think that, autism aside, I don't think neurodivergence is linear. I think it's like something that's very like quantum. Like, it exists. If you're neurodivergent, you probably have lots of different, there's probably lots of different things that you can do. You probably have lots of different positives and negatives. That's why I was saying there's no like baseline. Like with normies, they're just brain dead and they're gonna go watch their stupid sports. You know? Like, oh boy, wah wah wee wah, go watch the sports. Okay, go buy more garbage and then turn it around and throw it away. You know, go do the thing because everyone's doing the current thing. But then all of a sudden, everybody gets a vaccine that they don't need because all the normies go do it because, well, why would they tell us? Oh, blah blah blah. They tell. Shut up. Anyway, so I think that it's like really different. Like, and it's not just, I used to get in arguments with doctors about this because they're like, well, do you see things? And I'm like, well, I see different colored dots. Like, the worse my headaches get, the worse the dots get. They're like bluish green dots. And they're like, oh no, never mind. Those are, what do they call them? Like like ocular hallucinations versus like mental hallucinations or things like that. I'm like, whatever. Where'd you get your doctor's degree? You can tell me there's all different kinds of hallucinations now? Freaking whatever, doctors. So like, you know, if you see spooky things, you know, are they going to tell you you're schizophrenic? Or, you know, are they going to say that, you know, you're neurodivergent because you can see things that other Cracker Jack box? Exactly. Like, so if you can see ghosts, like, you're different from other people, right? Like, isn't that like neurodivergence? Like, if your brain can see those things but other people can't, like, if you can see the future, like, you're different from everybody else, you know? And so I think it's like really on like a quantum, like a 3-dimensional spectrum, not a linear. You know, you are going to be sensitive to light and sensitive to sound and sensitive to crowds. But, well, and I think you missed the beginning of this, but I think in the 90s, I think this all revolves around meds. I'm not saying someone did this all to us on purpose to put us all on meds, but like definitely the advent of this was to put people on massive amounts of meds. Because what they do for anxiety, they pump you up with pills. What do they do for ADD? They pump you up with pills. You know what I mean? Like, that's all they do, is they just pump you full of more and more and more and more, and they up the dosage more and more and more until you're a damn zombie. And then we have the other bad things happen. The you know what's, the mass events. So like, you can mutate to that? Hell yeah. So I don't know, like what are your, I choose to see them like superpowers. And I don't write about neurodivergence a lot in my books because it's just kind of assumed that everybody makes it because they're special. The whole psychology is just crap. They try to make us bad people. That's exactly why I won't talk to a psychologist. I'm not convinced that they're any smarter than anybody else. And I think whatever's going on with me and whatever's going on with most people at our level, a psychologist isn't even going to be able to absorb it. I think they're going to reject most of what we say. And one of the times I understood that the most is I was back before the Rona shutdowns. And before some like new medicines came out. I got fired or let go or whatever, relieved, because I was a contractor from a lot of jobs, because nobody wants to have somebody around that has headaches all the time and that has to sleep a lot and migraines. Like, they don't want people around like that. The psychologists are the ones behind the mass casualties. I haven't seen a single other plausible explanation except for that. So it's usually the most obvious thing, and I would say that's it. They're pushing the pills out. My headaches were pushing, and telework was extremely limited up until the Rona, and so I either had to have people like carpool with me to work so the drive didn't exhaust me and make me sick from like the tunnel vision and the vertigo, or I had to try to work from home as much as I could, which made the rest of the coworkers like really salty, even though I was leaps and bounds beyond them. I mean, what they accomplish in like a week, I could accomplish in like 2 hours. And it was very frustrating. Very, 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 very frustrating. So, I was looking down the path of like what disability would be, like social security disability, because like the world was not conforming to the fact that like the medicines didn't exist yet to like fix my headaches and stuff. And I couldn't find an employer that realized I was doing that. I was just running circles around everybody. They always wanted me to do more, burn me out, and then throw me to the curb when I would get sick, because they cared more about me working 40 hours than the fact that I was literally outperforming everybody in every single job I've ever had. So I was talking to some kind of like state-appointed doctor that was supposed to be evaluating me, and he was doing one of the tests, and like I couldn't remember what he was saying, and I couldn't repeat back to him what he was saying in the right order. Like, clearly I was failing. Clearly I was failing whatever test he was trying to give me. And he would not accept that I was like failing his test and not repeating the thing back to him that I was supposed to say. And I'll never forget that he just asked me it over and over and over and over and over until by pure guessing, I guess eventually like I guessed what the right answer was. And then he marked me down as a pass. And I looked at him, I'm like, what the fuck, dude? You made me drive all the way here. We're both wasting like half our day. And you're gonna write that I'm passing this thing. When clearly I'm not. Like, clearly I'm having problems, you know, dealing with your damn test. Like, I can't remember this insane gibberish that you're saying, along like all these words and letters and things that are completely don't have anything to do with anything. I'm just like clearly like my headaches have like turned my head into mush. And you're marking me down as a pass. He's like, I can't tell you, blah 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 blah. And sure enough, like, after failing this guy's test, because my brain was mush, just like it is right now, he passed me and said I was fine. And I was so frustrated, and it wasted like half of my day. I was yeah. And I'm just like, all right, fuck these people. Like, obviously they're in some other world, with some other agenda. But, you know, thankfully, some new medicines came around. There's some really groundbreaking medicines for headaches, and that helped a lot. And then telework came around. And so I don't have to exhaust myself for an hour and a half in traffic both ways every day until I'm just sick and exhausted. Now I have to deal with burnout instead, which everybody has to deal with. But you know, so what are your superpowers? What are your strengths and your weaknesses that make you different from everybody else? Not the color of your skin, but the strength of your character. What makes you different? What makes you better than everybody else? Like, there's a lot of people out there that think they're better than everybody else, but they're a bunch of damn normies. They can't do shit that's better than anybody else. They go home and watch stupid football. What makes you better? Superior. What makes you superior in some way than everybody else? And wonder to yourself if this is some kind of important difference that has never that's like a once in like 10 generations or once in 100 generations, where people's neurology literally diverges, and we end up with all these mutations where everybody has different cognitive abilities. Like, and what if this is some kind of like new awakening, and that all of our literature for ever since we were kids has been trying to tell us this, and people are trying to suppress it with drugs, and they're trying to suppress it with brainwashing, and they're trying to suppress it with drugs and brainwashing, what if we really are special? What if we really are just like way, way, way smarter than everybody else? I don't mean like IQ tests, because I've never taken like an IQ test. But yeah, some of it could like totally be hereditary. Like some of it could be like things happened to your brain when you were young. But yeah, like my brain's been on overdrive. You know, I couldn't sleep last night. It was just going like a million miles an hour. And I've been reading a lot more stuff talking about, you know, like the mind's eye, like people who can visualize things in their head. Rose-colored glasses sound like really cool, by the way. I'm not ignoring you. I've heard about that before. Cutting out like certain light. But I don't think video games make people violent any more than video games make people anything else. You know? Except for maybe make your hands a little bit more dexterous and make your hand-eye coordination a little bit faster. I don't think video games make you violent. I think that's idiotic. I don't think music makes people more violent. Like, what if we really are smarter than everybody else? Or can learn faster, or can think more abstract? You know? It's the difference between somebody who can push a button all day and somebody who can be an astrophysicist, or somebody who can be like a microbiologist, or somebody who can be, you know, nuclear physicist, astrophysicist, like whatever, quantum, like, what if we are really like a generation that's different? I'm sure I'm sure it's happened before, like a lot of great thinkers, like, you know, maybe around Leonardo da Vinci or something, like maybe there was a spike, and we have people like, sorry, my brain doesn't always work good, retention. I don't think like there's all these like celebrity fakes like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye the Science Guy. Those people are fakes. They're just part of the narrative. You know, I'm talking about like Stephen Hawking's and like Einstein and like Newton and like Da Vinci and stuff. Like, I'm not saying I'm those people, but like if you get enough of us together, we can do like amazing things. And we have this internet now where we can all find each other, because like in school you wouldn't have even known we existed, because either we had you know, a shield up and you couldn't tell because we got so tired of getting beaten up, or we just used what I call nerd Wi-Fi, and you're like, all right, I want to be left alone. I don't want to talk to anybody. Where can I go and hide? And then you would find all of the other people exactly like you who had all come to the same conclusion, to go and hide in the library, you know, or to go and hide, well, yeah, usually in the library or the cafeteria, like, or up away somewhere where just nobody could find you. Like, you would go find all the other people that had come to the same conclusion as you, and like, what if that's happening again? Like, what if the reason why we feel like 20% of the people at work are doing 80%, you know, and the other 80% of the people like aren't doing jack shit? What if that's because that's like really how it is? And management just doesn't want us to know, and society and the news, you know, they don't want us to know that the truth, that there really is only a couple people at every job holding up the whole damn thing. And it's this neurodiversity. What if neurodiversity is the real diversity? And they just don't want people to know that. And they've already, I guess there's already been stuff on Twitter where they call like people that are trying to push like neurodiversity like racist and homophobic and all the bad words, but it's like, I mean, what if this is really it, right? Like, we just think differently than everybody else. And it's who we are. Like, I don't know. And then the question is like, you got to be around people who see it as a gift and see it as value add, and then make sure you don't burn out, and make sure that you have things around you that enable you to succeed. You know, like I would like to see this. Excuse me, I would like to see this be encouraged at work. But oh yeah, and that's how I want to wrap this up. Neurodiversity, you're never going to see this on any form. When you fill out a work application, because they will never admit that this is a real thing, or at the very least that it's on par with different ethnicities, because it doesn't fit the narrative, and it doesn't fit their plans, and it doesn't fit their goals. And sure, people are trying to co-opt it, but they're trying to kill it too, and they're trying to just medicate it back to the Stone Age. And not that we need to like celebrate this, because it's not who we are, but I guess if you're out there and you think that you have some kind of superpower in your brain that you just like run circles around everybody else with, maybe it's time to healthily, of course, but like embrace it and feed it and nurture it and exercise it. And maybe that's what's going to give you the edge. Like, and I know I'm talking about like a superpower, and I know some people are like completely debilitated, but chances are those people probably aren't listening to this. And if you're getting offended for somebody else, then you think you're being like an ally to them or whatever. You're just like getting proxy offended for other people who I'm obviously not talking about. So if you have somebody in your family and their brain works differently, then like try to figure out what they're really good at and encourage it, and maybe that's the push that they need. So there's a question in chat, which mutant power outperforms which? I was thinking about that. Being able to like remember things really, really good has a lot of applications, but you know, not everybody who's neurodivergent can remember things really good. My brain feels like frickin' mashed potatoes like half the time, and I can remember stuff great 1 second, and then I can't remember things worth shit 5 seconds later, even after I've said a word 10 times. So like taking tests for me was horrible, and it gave me like super bad anxiety. So I eventually had to find a college that I didn't have to do massive tests. But I can learn new things, even ultra abstract things, really fast. So if you pair me with somebody who just likes to do the same thing over and over and over, but doesn't learn things really fast, I can learn the new thing, document it, and give it to them, and then they can do it over and over and over again. So I don't think it's about which mutant power would outperform which. I think it's about building a team that legitimately complements, you know, complementary powers, right? Like, not building a team because it's diverse and we need diverse backgrounds. No, like, you need a team that can work well together, that can actually solve problems and produce a thorough, high quality output. And then if you want to worry about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you will have a really, really strong team put together that can build you whatever you want. They can just figure out whatever you want. Why is stuff really bad in this area? How do we help people in this area? Well, you have a problem and you hand the problem over to them and they go figure it out. You don't need a team of diverse people from diverse freaking backgrounds to solve that problem. You need a team that works really well together that can actually figure things out. You can bring people in from those areas, and then whichever person that you have is really good at listening to people and writing things down, and someone who has a lot of empathy that can put themselves in that situation, and then, people that are really good at interpreting requirements and thinking out of the box for how to solve inequality. And the example of inequality I always think of is the fact that EVs and solar overwhelmingly benefit people who suspiciously have the money to afford EVs and solar. People in low incomes, regardless of what ethnicity they are, people that are low income won't ever be able to afford solar and EVs. Except those are two things that they could really use to get ahead. But EVs and solar aren't priced in a way that allows people to get ahead anyway, so even if they borrow, they're still stuck owing for 30 years. That's an equality. That is a huge equality issue. Rich people can afford things to permanently stay ahead. Plus, almost all their money is in assets anyway, so it's not like they pay taxes. Taxes, there you go. Taxes are something that just overwhelmingly hose people with low incomes. You don't see them trying to fix that shit. No. Why don't they go fix that? That's something they can go fix. Instead, the richy riches go talk to a private Wall Street convention that you never get to hear what the outcome is, and they get paid $100,000. And then you think those same people are going to somehow rein in Wall Street and rein in the banks as the banks just run themselves into the ground. I don't need to bring in a banker. I don't need to have a banker on my staff to know how fucked the banks are. But I know that a bank closing down in a poor neighborhood is going to screw everybody. I know if some assholes come in out of town and burn down the drugstore in a poor neighborhood, I know the poor neighborhood's screwed. I don't need to bring in just completely random ethnicities to tell me that people come in from out of town and destroy other people's towns. Safety, crime. These are all predominantly issues for low-income people. You don't need to bring low-income... You don't need to hire a bunch of low-income people to tell you that. if you want to hire people who make a low income that can do the job really well, then go for it. But you don't just start arbitrarily hiring. Like, what was the other example? Like firefighters, like whether it's a guy or a gal, like the firefighter needs to be really strong. You don't just like hire a bunch of like really weak people to be firefighters so you can. I don't even know why you would do that, but those are the kinds of dumb things that they do. So, whereas like if you hire police officers, like having gal police officers makes tons of sense because they handle things completely different and they're more apt to de-escalate and do all kinds of different things that guys wouldn't think of to do. And if they have to talk to gals, then having gals around to talk to other gals that have been victim of crimes is like huge, you know. It's about having really smart people that are able to work together in a cohesive team. You're gonna have people who are natural leaders who don't just run everything into the ground, you know, but you have to make sure those leaders don't get burnt out. You're gonna have people who like to make decisions but make really stupid decisions. You know, they have to be able to listen to the smart people around. Like, it all revolves around building a team. And again, like, that's what we grew up with, you know, X-Men and Ninja Turtles. Like, what are the Ninja Turtles? They're like a bunch of mutants that have to, they're each good at what they do, but they have to get along. Like, Donatello's the computer guy. Raph has an attitude, but he's also a natural leader and he's really strong. Leo wants to be the leader, but you know, he has some learning to do. But he also has the most dangerous, arguably, weapons of all of them. Raph is like the offensive guy, but he has the most defensive weapons. Michelangelo arguably has like the most capacity out of all of them, but he's like a goof off. You know, like, it's about using everybody's strengths and weaknesses, because our cities are being ran over by people in black costumes, stealing and breaking and attacking everybody and everything. Cowabunga. And X-Men's the same thing. Like, I feel like what we grew up on is trying to teach us something. And I guess you could argue that, like, instead of saying like the X-Men was about racism, you could say it's just about people who are different getting shit on. I don't think it's about, well, X-Men's complicated because you have Professor X who wants to keep everybody should be equal. And then you have Magneto, everybody should be superior. And a lot of people said, well, that's Malcolm X and MLK. But I think that even if like racism completely ceased to exist, and if everybody would stop talking about it, I still think that X-Men is every bit as relevant. Just talking about how if you're different at all, you get attacked. And if you say anything different at all, you get attacked. Just like people who are talking about neurodiversity got attacked on Twitter, and just like people were against radical feminism for a long time. And then the trans movement came along and everybody got mad at the radical feminists that didn't bend the knee to the trans movement. And then all the radical feminists became conservative. And like, if you don't believe me, go back and watch all of the feminist movement from like the late 90s, and then measure that against the feminists from now, and you'll see the feminists then were actually very, very, very conservative. I don't mean like religiously conservative, because the religions don't like it if gals run around with their tatas out. But radical feminism from the 90s is conservative by today's standards, by leaps and bounds. And the feminists from today's standards are like ultra far left. So, because, yeah, it's getting into like some different territory, but the point is like, I think how we were brought up was to like put teams of people together who think different, so we don't get wiped out. And I guess, you know, with the X-Men thing, it's like, I obviously lean more to Professor X than Magneto, because even though, like, maybe, you know, people who think differently, you know, they're going to have different pros and cons, but I still think we can all live together. I think the problem is that the normies don't want to. And I think Magneto says that at some point. He says, like, they won't let us. He's like, they won't let us be left alone. Or something like that. And I don't know. I think that, you know, we're like generation, I guess I'll end this by saying it's like, clearly we're Generation X. And people have been even trying to take that away from us. And the show is called X-Men, and there was literally a part of X-Men was eventually called Generation X. Like, I don't know. So yeah, the quote was from Patrick Stewart playing Professor X. It's the opening line of X-Men in the 2000 movie. Mutation is the key to our evolution. It enabled us to evolve from a single-celled organism to the dominant species of the planet. The process is slow, but sometimes it takes a huge leap forward. And I was really into Shadowrun as a kid, and the same thing happens in Shadowrun. All of a sudden, there's just a huge leap forward. And there's a lot of stuff in Shadowrun that's coming true right around us. All of the, which was like the gal's other video talking about transhumanism, you know, putting robot parts and chips and stuff in us, like all that's from Shadowrun. I guess that could be like the next episode, transhumanism. The problem is it's really hard to talk about transhumanism putting robot parts in us and in chips and computers, or the other kind, which is like wiping out all the babies that don't have the right DNA, according to some people, so to depopulate the planet. I still don't understand how transhumanism has two completely different interpretations. Putting computer chips in you or genocide. Like, I don't understand how that happens. Chad says, I think we're mutating already to understand what we understand now. We've never had this much radiation from the sun. Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up. I can't remember who said this or what, but it was something like if we lived on a planet with no radiation, we would still mutate, but it would take forever, because you need really, really, really light doses of radiation to mutate for the genes, the DNA, whatever, to actually do what it needs to do. You need to introduce, I'm not a doctor, this isn't a doctor, blah blah blah, you need like a tiny bit of radiation. So the planet, we as human beings, if we're going to keep evolving, and I don't mean like turning into fish frog mutants, I mean like survival of the fittest, like we need radiation. Just not a ton of it, or we just all turn into frickin' jelly. So with that, I'm going to close, and I appreciate you all, and I hope everybody can be mature enough to enjoy this episode and not get super triggered. And if you're listening to this and are triggered, either you're, I don't know, defending positions that aren't your own, or you misunderstood me. So I hope everyone liked this. I hope I didn't run a lot of people away. I see a couple of you still in here, so I hope I didn't run you all away. And I appreciate you all, and buy my books, and check out my coffee page. I think the majority of people are smart enough to see it all happening, are smart enough to get through it. I think the majority of people that are like us are smart enough to see everything that's happening. I don't think the majority of the general population knows what's happening at all, because they still do dumb shit like mow their lawns and wash their cars. I'm just like, why the fuck are you washing your car, man? You should be growing a garden. Go grow your garden. Get out of the city. Stop mowing your stupid lawn. Like, sell your house and leave. Get out of the freaking city. Go test your radio. Go test your batteries. Go do something. Go do something. Stop washing your car. I mean, obviously, like, but then I see other people whose cars are like coated in sap. And I'm like, you better go wash your car. That sap's just gonna eat through it. What's wrong with you? Did you park under a tree? Don't do that. Anyway, I appreciate you, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope I didn't piss anybody off, and I will talk to you all later. Yeah, I think next episode we'll talk about job stuff and transhumanism, maybe, if there is a next episode. I can't promise there will be. I'm getting very, very, very close to having to disappear for a little while, so don't let your cars get coated in sap, because you might need to bug out, and then you won't be able to open your car door. Oh man, I hate it when the migratory birds like all simultaneously take a shit on your car at the same time. Oh, it's just so disgusting. Anyway, you guys are so funny. I hope I didn't trigger anybody or get canceled and the YouTube algorithm kill me, kill my channel. I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye. All right, this is the new and improved and updated ending. Okay, so I have this I wrote this last night. I think this was last night. Holy shit, this was really late last night. So this kind of like sums up Oh, you're gonna miss. Okay. So I talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. I talk about Generation X. You know, the X factor, if you will. Some kind of X force, maybe even X-Men or Generation X. Professor Xavier. Anyway, earlier I was gonna tie the whole wheelchair thing into like the whole Professor X thing, but then I was like, yeah, that's too on the nose. So I wrote this to kind of summarize up all the thoughts that I was trying to make. So pretend, if you will, that 80% of the job postings right now are fake. They're going to keep raising interest rates. This temporary pause is the false reprieve they do. Ethnicity, culture have fully evolved to identity, not inclusion. AI has taken over recruiting and HR learning from the thousands of postings to fake jobs. Soon there will be no need for people to recruit, hire, and fire, no need for coders or analysts, and when 80% of the staff are laid off, there will be no need for diversity, equity, and inclusion because everyone will be on universal basic income, social credit scores, and digital central currency. By then, commercial real estate leaders will expire on the ghost buildings, and 60+% of buildings in each city will sit empty with the banks holding the bill. But there won't be any positions to hire any longer. The server farms will be gone, and each subdivision will be full of RVs, clinging to anyone remaining employed. And what really drove that home for me earlier today, I think, was accidentally stumbling upon this article talking about vanlords. They're like landlords, but vanlords. And in my books, I talk about, you know, these derelict RV graveyards, and they're popping back up again. And they were really big in like 2014, 2015, 2016. And they're finally making their rounds where around what's left of buildings that are employing anybody is RVs. And people, they go park the RVs there, then they rent the RVs out for like shitloads of money. Because there is nowhere to live. There is nowhere to live. And I was looking on Redfin earlier, and I'm seeing more evidence of them trying to sell houses that were destroyed from squatters. And we are in the eye of the storm right now. These little like plateaus where everything looks like it's going to be okay for a while, but like everything's obfuscated. I mean, they even went as far as to like pause interest rates, but then they already announced like 2 more interest rates. Like, this is the calm before the storm right now. This is where it seems like there's a couple houses available. You know, it seems like there's jobs available. But this is all fake, orchestrated, like, theatrics. And maybe there's not going to be, like, one big, giant, colossal crash, rug pull. However, it's looking like that actually is becoming more likely, given, like, the massive amounts of, like, AI collecting, like, fake job postings and stuff to where companies won't need recruiters or HR anymore. Like, there are full suites of AI tools now that can gather job postings, vet people, do the interviews, check their nonverbal communication in their eyes and their mouths and their reactions and everything. And AI can recruit and hire people now. And if you think that AI gives a shit about diversity, it doesn't. I don't even know. Like, it unfortunately costs like a lot of money to like sign up for these services to figure out exactly what these AIs are doing, because they're charging a fortune for them. But like, AIs are going to replace so much. There are so many people that are going to get laid off. It is going to be insane. It is going to make 2016, it's going to make 2007, 2008, 2015, 2016 look like a freaking joke in comparison. That's true. AI can't replace cute dogs. I agree. If your cute dog brings you income, then you're golden. Like that's thinking ahead. But I'm talking about like corporate. Like, they are going to be laying off so many people. And I'm not even talking about like when AIs can start driving trucks and stuff. Like, this, and the thing is, like, this unemployment, like, these jobs are never coming back. So, and it will be the perfect segue to universal basic income and digital currency and the food crash and the stores just being looted, like, and them having to lock the stores down. So I think diversity, equity, inclusion, I think it's all been a distraction for people to not just hire smart people that can make their jobs and their jobs and their businesses like recession proof. I still think there's a value to really good recruiters and short lists. I think laying off all the recruiters is a horrible idea. I think laying off HR is a horrible idea. I think HR can be ran better. But like, AIs aren't going to care about retention. Like, you can't have your AI can't like generate a good culture at work. Right? Regarding AI trucks, you still lose phone service. What's funny is like you can have an AI truck run off satellite, but yeah, what happens if it drives through a canyon or drives under trees? Yeah, I guess maybe there could be routes where you can't have an AI unless it has like little probes that go around it, because like you can have like LiDAR and stuff, but you can't, it's not going to be foolproof, that's for sure. So we are headed for, I can like unequivocally say, like scientifically for an absolute fact, we are headed for like a second great recession. This is only the beginning of the layoffs. And I can't even imagine how many people are going to be laid off. The hiring freezes have already started. These fake jobs are going to disappear because all the real jobs, the job postings are gone within a day or two. So all the job numbers that they're throwing out are false. Those are all solely based off of fake ghost job postings. And all of the commercial buildings, they're already empty, most of them, and their leases are coming due, and their leases are getting shorter and shorter, and the buildings are still just as expensive. Fuel's going through the roof. You think it's going to look close to like the Depression of the 30s? I think it's going to look like the 30s, except there's going to be RVs. There's going to be RVs everywhere. And yeah, those shanty towns or Hoover towns, Hoovervilles, except with RVs. But the thing is, like, yeah, RVs are still better than tents, but like, this is going to be very, very bad. Some people will still have to come in the office, but it's going to be too dangerous to get to the office, and it's going to be too expensive. People, well, I read this thing. You have to make more than like $70,000 a year or something just to get like a 1-bedroom within like commuting distance of like your office in like most of the cities now. Because like 70,000 is like the new minimum wage in cities. Which, and move to rural areas. Well, guess what? That's what more people are going to do. More people are going to move to the rural areas. And then you know what's going to happen? They're going to drive all your prices up. So, and in the meantime, like gas is going to keep getting more and more expensive. And they keep building those little scooters with lithium ion. And like those scooters aren't going to last forever. Like, I would really highly suggest, investing in a good mountain bike. And if you can't afford to build a tiny home, getting a couple of like really affordable RVs and just taking good care of them, because in all likelihood you're going to be taking in refugees, extended like friends and family that are like-minded, because the AI can write code for you now. It can write SQL code, it can write computer code. Pretty soon AI is going to be able to just make whole computer programs. Like, computer developers are going to be obsolete. BSAs are going to be almost completely obsolete. Server admins are going to be completely obsolete because everything's going to be in server farms. Like, and it's all going to be automated. Like, hubby got you 2 bikes out of the trash can in great shape because Scooter needs it. Oh, dude. Good. I think getting bicycles and getting like bicycle parts right now, mountain bikes and stuff, not the motor ones, because like those lithium ions are like pretty volatile. Although those are good too if you can get a good one that's going to stand behind its product and not crash during the recession. But like getting mountain bikes and trikes and stuff. Oh, good. Getting those things right now, like a lot of people are getting like quads and motorcycles. Hell yeah, dumpster diving's freaking awesome. In Minecraft, dumpster craft. I know a lot of people are getting like quads and motorcycles and stuff right now. Like, use this time to get your batteries, get your solar. If you're gonna get a rechargeable motorbike, get one that's got a really good from a really reputable company that's gonna stand behind their product. Like, and if you're gonna move to somewhere where there's some shops that are local to you, and if you can telework, like, start hedging towards as much telework as you possibly can, because Schwinn, I think a couple days ago gas went up like 20 cents in like one day. Like, once the pin gets pulled on gas, we could be looking at like $20 a gallon gas. So it isn't going to matter if you live like 5 minutes or 50 miles from work. Like, gas is going to be too expensive, and you're going to be bicycling, and do you think you're going to be able to get a delivery? do you think you're going to get your Amazon delivery when gas is like $20 a gallon? Like, a lot of the work right now is gig work. That shit is all going to stop. And a lot of the fake work right now is like gig work, Uber drivers, delivery drivers. Like, that shit is going away. FedEx, UPS. It is all going to be shutting down. 18 miles from everything. Then that's when having motorcycles and something with, or if you have a big enough truck to where you can, do multiple, families worth of grocery shopping, in one vehicle, so you can pick up everything that everybody needs and I'll take it home in like one vehicle, and then hope that you don't, get robbed by highwaymen on the way home. But I'm gonna wrap this episode up by saying, you got Harley. Yeah, I know a lot of people that are working on quads and motorcycles right now. Like, it's good. And one of the first things I'm gonna do when I get a chance is I'm gonna be working on my bicycle. You go to town once a week, yeah, that's good. And then, yeah, if you're in like a big truck, you know, you can get a lot of groceries, and then you can like be in charge of delivering, you know, the groceries, because like gas is going to be insanely expensive. It already is insanely, like we're going to be back up to like $80 just to fill up a mid-sized vehicle very, very, very soon, even from affordable quote unquote affordable gas stations. Like I said the other day, it shot up like 20 cents in one day. So now is the calm before the storm. And I knew it was going to happen as soon as the Fed stopped raising interest rates. But they already announced 2 more hikes. And in Europe, they raised theirs. So like, it's the highest, they said it's the highest it's been there in like 20 years or more or something. So like, this shit is happening. So take it easy. Get prepared. If you're still employed somewhere, coalesce around your high performers and focus on retention. You got your Saturn? Perfect. Focus on retaining your good employees. If you have the ear of management at all, focus on retaining your good employees. Regardless of what identity they are. If they're a hard worker and they're dedicated, wow, then they need to be focusing on keeping those employees, because you're going to need all your high performers. You don't want to be trying to recruit right now when every job posting gets hundreds of job postings in a few minutes. You don't want to be trying to like recruit and deal with that. You might think it's easier to get higher performers, more qualified people when everybody's unemployed, but it's like drinking through a fire hose. And you get all kinds of algorithms and fakes and mass job posters and scammers and parasites. It's, I don't know. It's like trying to grocery shop during a friggin' tornado. So you want the economy to be nice and normal, where everybody's staying in their lane and applying for their lane. Not when you're trying to get newbies fresh out of college and you're getting everybody across the entire spectrum. So if you're a manager and you're listening to this, focus on retention. Don't just expect out of everybody's good nature that they're going to stay around. Because everybody that's high performing has already shopped around and they already work where they want. You just have to be compensating them properly. And even if they act a little different, even if they act a little weird, or their brains work a little different than everybody, those are going to be the people that make your difference. Those are going to be the people that come up with the good ideas. And if you think you're just going to go to a rural area and start working, like, just remember they're not always necessarily going to trust you. Because a lot of the rural areas are already used to like people come in and trying to change their culture, and they don't like it. Their culture already works for them. So I'll say what I say in prior episodes. When you move to a new area, you're gonna have to learn their culture and try to make it work for everybody. You know? And if you move there with a bunch of your friends or family, try to integrate and find that middle ground, common middle ground. Don't act like an outsider, you know, so you don't get, you're not from around here. And like I always say, like, don't go raid their Walmart. They will be very, very, very concerned. Like, we went to like a rural Walmart again the other day. We only got a couple things. That way they don't get skittish. You know, you're going to have to learn how to talk like they talk. Learn their types of pleasantries. And you're all going to have to get along. Because there's going to be a lot of things that they know of to look out for that you're not going to know to look out for. They can warn you. You know, look out for this, look out for that. Or they can decide to just let you trip and fall. So I think that like more classical liberal ideas have become a little bit more accepted as long as you don't ask, unless you don't act, as long as you don't act really uppity. But like if you're far left and you're running around trying to get people to accept your pronouns, like, you're gonna get shown the door, just like what the people in the cities did with their cute little remarks. You have the freedom of speech and we have the freedom to show you the door. Well, it's gonna be like that in rural areas because they're tired of their shit getting looted and burned down too. They can't afford to have their buildings and businesses damaged any more than anybody else can. And again, I'll reiterate, like, you may think insurance XYZ. In the cities, the insurance stopped covering riot damage ages and ages and ages ago. Those companies that are staying open are suing the city, which means it's just harming taxpayers more. So, if you move to a rural area, you're all going to have to be banding together and you're all going to have to be on the same team because you're all going to be under attack together and you can't get divided. And so, yeah, this is the real end to this episode. This really is going to be my last episode for quite a long time. I finally got everything out that I needed to. I hope people listen to this, and if this helped you somehow, check out my Ko-fi page or my books. This isn't the end. This is just the beginning. And so everyone just needs to be aware, and they need to be kind, and don't get divided, and realize that you're going to have some neurodivergent folks that act kind of weird but are really super smart, but kind of socially awkward, lingering around as telework gets all confused, and people kind of are going to be a little awkward. So, but if they're really super smart, try to help people. And if you get new people on board, welcome them in, even if they're weird and scared and confused. So we can all try to get through this, because remember, we're all human beings, and everybody's going to have a big basket of shit going on now. So just take care of each other so we can get through this. Don't get divided. Even if somebody comes to work in a bunny costume, like, maybe they just like carrots and they have a cottontail. I don't know. Maybe they like to hide colored eggs everywhere. You know? Or maybe they're just a total psychopath. So you gotta be careful. Or they're a figment of your imagination. Maybe there really isn't a person with a bunny costume there and everyone's just agreeing with you because you fucking lost your mind. So everyone needs to be super kind to each other. Okay? We'll get through this. This is just the beginning. My next episode is probably going to be a long ways from now, but sus bunny is coming. So yeah, a lot of things are about to happen, but I'll be back. So I appreciate you all, and hang in there and check out my coffee and my books. And Volume 1 and Volume 2 have new book covers. I was gonna upload. I might upload something that I haven't uploaded yet in like a week or so, just so there's more content that go over like the book covers. But this is my last kind of live episode, probably for about a month. So I gotta do some things. But y'all take care, and I'll still be updating the coffee page with new coffee stories, sad ones and happy ones, and test stories. So that's where everything goes, in case I never make another print book, so it's all saved somewhere. So you. And then when we come back, we'll have coffee mugs. We'll have coffee mugs for sale when we come back. I promise. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
You've been listening to the Bunker Codes podcast. I hope you found our time valuable. Please exit safely and conduct yourself responsibly. Until we talk again, have a nice day.